The wind came down from the high desert that evening like a whisper of ghosts, cold and restless, carrying the faint scent of rain and distant fire. Samuel Hartley sat alone by the hearth, the only sound in the room the faint crackle of burning wood. The chair creaked beneath his weight as he leaned forward, rubbing his hands over the flame, chasing warmth that never seemed to reach the hollow in his chest. He'd been alone for 15 years on this land, alone with his memories, his guilt, and 1,000 acres of silence that stretched farther than the eye could see. His coffee had gone cold in the tin cup beside him. He didn't care. The same routine filled his days. Rise before dawn, feed the chickens that remained, mend a fence that no longer held anything worth keeping. He'd once owned a herd of 30 cattle. Now he had 2, both too old to bother selling. The ranch, like him, was just waiting to be buried by time. A photograph rested on the mantelpiece. A woman in a light dress, hair pinned neat, eyes kind enough to melt stone. Clara, his Clara. The one piece of warmth this world had ever offered him, and the one thing it had taken away too soon. Some nights, he still woke up expecting her to be beside him, humming under her breath like she used to. Then he'd turn over and find only the cold half of the bed, and the truth waiting there like a knife. Outside, the sky was bruised purple with the coming storm. He stood up, joints aching, and went to latch the windows. As he did, he thought he heard something strange, a noise that didn't belong to the wind. He paused, head tilted. There it was again, faint, uneven, almost human. Voices? Maybe just coyotes. Maybe the storm playing tricks again. But then came the sound that made his blood freeze. Horses. He hadn't seen a rider in months, not since the army passed through last spring. Grabbing his rifle, Sam stepped outside, squinting into the twilight. The plain stretched empty toward the hills, shadows crawling over the ground. Then he saw them. 5 figures, walking, not riding, moving slowly along the fence line. They were women, their shapes bent with exhaustion, shawls flapping in the wind like torn flags. Sam tightened his grip on the rifle but didn't raise it. Something about the sight stopped him. These weren't raiders or thieves. They were barely standing. When they reached the gate, one of them lifted her head. Her face was streaked with dust, her hair tangled, her eyes dark as storm clouds. "Please," she called out in accented English. "We need shelter." Sam took a step forward. The rifle hung limp in his hands now. "Who are you?" he asked. "Widows," she said. "Apache widows." The word hit him like a blow. He had fought in the border wars years ago, back when he still believed killing had a purpose. He'd ridden with the cavalry, burned villages, done things that haunted his dreams. Now 5 women who'd lost their husbands in those same wars stood before him, asking for mercy. The tallest woman stepped closer. "We walked from San Pedro Valley," she said. "Soldiers came. Our homes are gone." Sam swallowed hard. "There's a town 20 miles east. Maybe they can—" "They turned us away," she interrupted softly. "No food, no fire, no place for people like us." Her voice cracked on the last word. Behind her, one of the younger women collapsed to her knees, clutching her stomach. Sam cursed under his breath. He could have turned them away, could have pretended he hadn't heard the knock of fate at his door, but he couldn't bring himself to. "Come in," he said finally, voice rough. "You'll freeze out here." Inside, the women gathered around the fire. Their faces glowed amber in the flicker of the flames, hollow with hunger but proud somehow, like the mountains themselves. Sam poured what coffee he had left into tin cups and passed them around. They thanked him in broken English, whispering among themselves in their own tongue. The leader introduced herself as Nita. The others were Taya, Osha, Mina, and Lani. Each name carried a melody that made him ache in a way he couldn't explain. When he asked what had happened, Nita told him everything: the raid, the gunfire, the soldiers who'd shown no mercy, the long march north with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Sam listened in silence. Every word was a knife, reopening old scars. When she finished, the cabin fell quiet, except for the hiss of the fire. "You've lost a lot," he murmured. Nita met his eyes. "So have you." He looked away, ashamed that a stranger could read him so easily. "My wife," he said after a moment. "Fever took her, years back. Haven't spoken to anyone much since." Nita nodded, as if she understood without needing to. "Then you know what it means," she said softly. "To bury half your soul and still wake up breathing." The words stayed with him long after they'd gone to sleep. He gave them his bed, took his blanket to the chair, and stared into the dying embers until dawn. When morning came, he found Nita outside tending to the horses. She moved with quiet grace, her hands gentle as she brushed the animal's coat. He hadn't seen care like that in years. "You don't have to work," he said. "You're guests." She smiled faintly. Guests should not be useless. By midday, the women had cleaned the kitchen, patched the holes in the walls, and washed the linens that had gathered dust for months. The cabin smelled of soap and stew for the first time in years. Sam stood by the door, watching them move about, a strange warmth growing in his chest. He didn't say it out loud, but something in him had woken up. That night, they all ate together. Taya told a story from her tribe, a story about spirits who guide the lost back to the fire. The others listened with soft smiles, and even Sam, though he didn't understand every word, felt the truth in it. For the first time in forever, he wasn't alone at his table. But peace, he knew, never lasted long in the West. The next morning, he rode into town for flour and oil. Folks stared as soon as he walked through the general store door. Murmurs followed him down the aisle. When he reached the counter, the storekeeper leaned close. "You harboring them Apache women, Sam?" He didn't answer. "Word's getting around," the man continued. "You'd best send 'em off. Ain't right, what you're doing." Sam felt his temper flare. "What I'm doing is giving them food and a roof. You'd do the same if you weren't so damn scared of your own shadow." The room went quiet. He paid for his supplies and left without another word. As he mounted his horse, he saw a few men gathered near the saloon, watching him with cold eyes. He knew that look, the kind that meant trouble was brewing. When he got home, Nita was waiting by the gate, wind tugging at her shawl. "They will come here, won't they?" she asked. He hesitated, then nodded. "Probably." "Then we will leave," she said simply. "No," he said. "You're safe here." She looked at him for a long moment. "Safe?" she whispered. "No one is ever safe, Samuel Hartley. Not us. Not you." He didn't have an answer. That night, as they all sat by the fire again, Sam could feel the storm building, this time not in the sky, but in the hearts of men too proud to let peace exist. Yet he also felt something else, something stronger than fear, a sense of purpose he hadn't known he still carried. He watched the 5 women laugh quietly among themselves, the firelight dancing in their eyes, and thought of how empty this place had been before they arrived. Maybe, he realized, loneliness wasn't the punishment he thought it was. Maybe it was just the waiting room for grace. And as the wind howled against the window, Sam Hartley finally whispered a prayer, not for himself, but for them all. Saturday, sun rose over the valley slow and red, painting the dry hills in gold. But the peace of that morning carried a tremor in its bones. Samuel Hartley woke before the light reached his porch. He fed the fire, stirred the ashes, and felt the heavy stillness pressing against the walls. He'd known it was coming. The price for kindness, the reckoning for taking in souls others had cast out. When he stepped outside, the air already felt charged, like a storm waiting for its first crack of thunder. Nita was at the well, drawing water with her shawl pulled tight against the morning chill. The other women were quiet, their eyes darting toward the road beyond the fence. Nobody said a word, but they all felt it. Something was moving closer. By mid-morning, the sound of hooves broke the horizon. Sam shaded his eyes and counted 5 riders coming fast. Men he recognized from town, the same ones who'd glared at him by the saloon 2 days ago. They rode with rifles strapped across their backs, faces grim, the kind of men who believed they carried justice when what they carried was only hate. Sam stepped forward, planting his boots in the dirt at the edge of the yard. "Morning," he called, voice steady but cold. The leader, a broad-shouldered rancher named Jess Carver, pulled his horse to a stop. "Don't play dumb, Hartley. You know why we're here." "Reckon I do," Sam said. Carver spat into the dust. "You got 5 Apache women hiding on your land. They're the wives of killers. You're bringing their kind too close to decent folks. Send them out, and we'll be on our way." Sam's hands rested lightly on the rifle leaning against the porch rail. "Ain't nobody hiding here. They're just trying to live." Carver's eyes narrowed. "You gone soft, old man? You forget what those savages did to our people?" Sam's jaw clenched. "I remember too damn well. I also remember what we did to theirs." A tense silence followed. Behind Sam, the cabin door opened quietly. Nita stepped out, standing tall despite the fear twisting inside her. Her face was calm, her eyes steady. "They have done nothing wrong," she said. "Only lost everything. We came here to survive, not to fight." Carver's lip curled. "I don't talk to savages.